Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I don't feel anything for you. That's all she said. 4 words. No emotion. No hesitation. Just that detached tone women use when they've already rehearsed the line in their head 100 times and are just waiting for the right moment to drop it. She didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. I was standing 3 feet away, holding her coffee. Freshly made. The way she liked it. Oat milk, no sugar, just hot enough to fog the glass. She never touched it. She turned, walked out of the kitchen, and left those words in the air like a lit match in a room full of gas. And I didn't explode. I just froze. Not from pain. From clarity. It was like someone wiped the fog off the mirror and, for the first time in months, I saw what had been staring back at me all along. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She wasn't trying anything. Because I didn't matter anymore. That was the real sting. It wasn't betrayal. It was irrelevance. And you know what's worse than being hated? Being nothing. She had stopped seeing me weeks ago. Maybe months. And I had been too busy trying to fix us to notice I was the only one still showing up. All the signs were there. The way she used to text, "Be safe, love," when I left for work. Gone. The way she'd laugh at my bad jokes. Gone. The late-night talks. The spontaneous touches. The sense that I still existed in her world as more than just a name on the lease gone. She had been pulling away quietly, piece by piece, like someone taking down a house brick by brick so slowly you don't hear it collapsing until you're standing in the ruins. And now here we were. No yelling. No tears. Just silence. She thought she'd ended something. She had no idea she'd just started it. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't even look at her when she walked past me in the hallway to go to bed early again. I just stared at her untouched coffee. And I made a decision. I was done chasing a ghost. Done performing for someone who didn't care if I existed or not. She thought I was too safe to leave. Too loyal to change. Too predictable to surprise her. She had no idea what silence can become when a man stops begging to be seen. The next morning, I left the house without saying a word. I didn't ask if she needed anything. Didn't remind her of the vet appointment. Didn't make breakfast. Didn't exist. And for a little while, she didn't notice. But she would. Oh, she would. The strange part was how normal everything seemed the next morning. She moved through the house like nothing had happened. Hair wrapped in a towel. Spotify playing softly in the background. Humming some half-forgotten tune as she made her smoothie. Like we hadn't crossed a line the night before. Like she hadn't looked me in the eye and erased our marriage with one sentence. I watched her from the hallway, quiet, still, invisible. She wasn't trying to apologize. Wasn't even pretending to regret what she'd said. In her mind, it was already done. Close tab. Archived file. On to the next version of her life. And that, I realized, was part of the mask. Not the kind you wear to deceive others. The kind you wear so long, you start to believe it's your real face. She was performing. For herself. Still getting dressed. Still taking selfies. Still updating her little world, post by post, filter by filter. Trying to convince herself she was free. Untouched. Unbothered. Unaccountable. But I wasn't playing along anymore. I stopped filling in the blanks she left behind. When she forgot to buy groceries, I didn't go back out. When she left dishes in the sink, I let them pile up. When she curled up on the couch and started another show I'd never heard of, I didn't ask what it was. I just walked past her. Ghost-like. Present, but removed. She started to notice. Subtly. She asked if I was okay. I said, fine. She offered me coffee. I said, already had some. She told me she might get dinner with friends later. I nodded, not even asking who. I wasn't being cold. I was being honest. She wanted distance? Fine. I could build her an entire continent of it. At night, I'd lie on my side of the bed, further than usual. She didn't reach for me. Didn't try to speak. Just scrolled through her phone, screen glowing like a wall between us. She laughed once. Not at me. At something or someone on the screen. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I felt detached. Like I was watching a stranger live in my house, wearing my wife's skin. The house became a theater of unspoken moments. 2 actors, pretending to still be part of the same story. But the script had changed. And only one of us had read the last page. What she didn't understand, what she never saw coming, was that I wasn't trying to win her back. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done. And it's the quiet kind of done that you can't reverse. Not with flowers. Not with tears. Not even with regret. She thought saying, "I feel nothing for you," was the final move. She didn't realize it was the opening. Because when a man truly lets go, he doesn't shout. He vanishes. And that's exactly what I had started to do. There's a point where pain stops feeling sharp and starts feeling instructional. You don't just bleed. You begin to analyze the wound. I stopped asking myself if she loved me. That wasn't the question anymore. The real question was simpler. When did she stop seeing me as a man? Because that's what it came down to. Not just love, not attraction, not comfort, but presence. Being someone worth reacting to. Somewhere along the line, I had become furniture. Dependable, silent, unmoving, useful but forgettable. And the irony? I'd built that image myself. Every time I swallowed my frustration. Every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. Every time I made peace just to avoid the war. I thought I was being a good husband. Turns out, I was just fading. There were signs, of course. Little ones that I shrugged off in the name of patience. The way she started using "I" more than "we." The way her compliments became logistical. "Thanks for doing the dishes," instead of "I appreciate you." The way she talked about needing space, but never included me in what she wanted to build. It wasn't sudden. It was erosion. And like most men, I ignored it until it became a cliff. But now I was awake. Not in anger. In clarity. I started running back the timeline. When was the last time she asked how I was doing without a follow-up about bills or errands? When was the last time we touched without it feeling like an obligation? When was the last time she looked at me, not through me, but at me? And then came the harder questions. What if this wasn't a phase? What if this was her final form? Not broken, just done pretending. She used to say things like, "I just need time to figure things out." But time doesn't fix contempt. And that's what I'd started to feel from her, contempt in slow doses. At dinner, she'd talk about a new podcast that really opened her eyes. I'd nod. She'd never ask if I listened. She posted photos of sunsets, coffee cups, her morning runs. Not one picture of us in the last 8 months. And when I brought it up, gently, weeks ago, she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she'd already made peace with the distance. That laugh echoed now. It became a milestone. The moment I should have seen the exit sign. So I stopped asking what changed. The better question was, what now? I saw 2 options. Option 1. Keep orbiting her, hoping she notices I'm still spinning. Option 2. Go silent. Not passive-aggressive. Not dramatic. Just vanish emotionally. Remove myself from the script. And watch what she does when the spotlight moves off her. Because people reveal themselves not when they're confronted, but when they lose control. So that's what I did. I pulled back, inward. She wasn't responsible for my healing, but she had forfeited the right to witness it. My first move wasn't loud. It wasn't slamming a door or packing a bag or giving some speech about how I deserved more. Men like me don't talk like that. We act. Quietly. Calculated. So I started with silence. Not the cold, punishing kind. The surgical kind. I withdrew gently, but completely. No more good mornings. No more casual hand on her back as I passed. No more filling in her gaps. She wanted independence. I handed it to her on a silver tray. That first week, she barely noticed. She was too busy finding herself. New morning rituals. Journaling. Face masks. Talking about energy, frequencies, boundaries, like our marriage was some kind of interference. She played soft meditation music during breakfast, as if white noise could replace conversation. I let her. I stopped asking where she was going or when she'd be back. Didn't comment on her new outfits, her sudden love for overpriced candles, or the fact that she started locking her phone again. Let her be whoever she thought she was becoming. My world got quieter, and I liked it. I started going to the gym again, not to impress her, not to attract someone new, to feel something, to reclaim that piece of me I had buried under errands and compromise. One night, I stayed late, lifted heavy, showered slow, drove around with no destination, windows down, music up. When I walked in past 9 p.m., she looked up from the couch, surprised. That was new. She asked if I had eaten. I nodded. She started to say something else, then stopped. I walked past her, went upstairs, and closed the door. No drama. No accusation. Just movement. The next day, she tried to test the waters. She made my favorite pasta. Lit a candle. Sat across from me like we were on a date. I ate. Thanked her. Didn't compliment it. Didn't reach for her hand when she brushed mine. It rattled her. I could see it in the way she stared at her fork between bites, like she was waiting for the old version of me to show up. The fixer, the pleaser, the man who used to meet her halfway, even when she refused to take a single step. But he was gone. She asked what I'd been thinking about lately. I said, nothing much. She tried again the next morning, made me coffee. I thanked her, left it untouched on the counter. It was working, not because she looked hurt, but because she looked unsure. And that's something she hadn't felt in a long time. She was used to having control, withholding affection, dictating the tone, setting the emotional thermostat in the room. But now I wasn't reacting. And people like her, they depend on reaction. They mistake silence for weakness until it starts to echo. She didn't know it yet, but the power had shifted. Not because I demanded it, because I stopped giving it away. She didn't crack right away. At first, she just adjusted. More effort in her tone, more intentional smiles, a softer edge to her voice, like she was trying to remember how she used to sound when things were good. But it was artificial. I could feel it, like watching someone reenact a scene they didn't believe in anymore. She started asking more questions. How was your day? Want to watch something later? Should we go somewhere this weekend? I gave polite, empty answers. Fine. Maybe. Up to you. And then I'd go back to what I was doing. Or leave the room altogether. She began to hover. Not clingy yet, but present in a way she hadn't been in months. Lingering in doorways. Sitting closer on the couch. Leaving her phone face down instead of glued to her hand. She didn't say it out loud, but I saw the question forming in her eyes. What changed? She couldn't figure it out. Because I hadn't shouted. I hadn't left. I hadn't accused. I had simply removed the gravity that once pulled me toward her. That's what rattled her. She didn't know how to fight silence. She didn't know how to seduce indifference. One night, she came into the bedroom wearing something she hadn't worn in over a year. Something soft, intentional. She lay down beside me without a word. I didn't reach for her. She shifted closer. Her hand brushed my arm. I didn't move. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Then she exhaled sharply, rolled away, and pulled the blanket up to her shoulders like armor. That was the beginning of her unraveling. Not because I rejected her body, but because I didn't need it to validate my worth anymore. The next morning, I caught her watching me as I buttoned my shirt. There was confusion in her gaze, and something else, maybe regret. But I didn't engage. I grabbed my keys, said, "Have a good day," and walked out the door like I had somewhere better to be. And for the first time in a long time, I did. Later that week, I came home to dinner already made. She'd set the table, lit a candle, even put on music she knew I liked. I sat down, thanked her, ate quietly. She waited for me to soften, to say something that would signal this could go back to normal. But I stayed in the quiet, not to punish her, to protect me. She tried one more time before bed, stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching me undress. She asked if I wanted to talk. I said, not really. And then I turned off the light. She didn't follow me into sleep that night. She stayed up, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone again, but this time with a different energy. Not bored, not distant, restless. Like she finally felt what I'd been living in for months, uncertainty. She thought she was choosing detachment. She didn't realize detachment can be mutual. And when it is, it's irreversible. It happened on a Tuesday. Quiet morning. Cold coffee. Emails I didn't care about. She was upstairs, pacing. I could hear her heels on the hardwood. Sharp, impatient. She was talking to someone on speaker. Door halfway closed. Dryer humming in the background. Maybe she thought I couldn't hear her from the hallway. Maybe she didn't care. But I heard it. He said something. His voice low, familiar in a way that made my skin tighten. And then she laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not forced. A real one. The kind I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since before she stopped touching me. Not since she started telling me she didn't feel anything. Then came the sentence. She said, he doesn't notice anything anymore. I could disappear, and he'd still do the dishes. She laughed again, and I stood there, still, breathing slow, letting it sink in, not the betrayal, not the implication, but the certainty in her voice. She believed it. She believed I was still orbiting her, that my silence meant surrender, that she could test new waters, dip into side conversations, soft flirtations, because I was safe. I was stationary. And in that moment, I realized something. She had no idea she'd already lost me. I didn't storm in, didn't confront, didn't ask who he was or why her voice sounded lighter with him than it had with me in years. I just turned and walked away. Because now I had everything I needed. Not proof. Not ammunition. Just confirmation. Her detachment wasn't a phase. It wasn't confusion. It was a choice. She had chosen someone else emotionally, maybe more. And now she was slipping. Careless. Overconfident. That was her mistake. Not the flirtation. The assumption. She thought I was still clinging to hope. That I was still waiting at the edge of her apathy with open arms and a fragile heart. But she'd misunderstood my silence. It wasn't submission. It was strategy. And that changed everything. That night, I didn't eat at home. I stayed out late. Gym, long drive, quiet dinner alone. No explanation. No check-in. When I came back, she was waiting, eyes flicking to the clock, voice too casual. You're late. I nodded. I know. She asked what I'd been doing. I said, thinking. She didn't press. But she watched me for a long time after that, like trying to read a book written in a language she no longer understood. And when I went to bed without a word, without asking if she was coming too, she lingered in the kitchen. Scrolling, pacing, second-guessing. She had made her move. And now she realized she might have played it too soon. But that's the thing about mistakes. You don't feel the weight of them until the other person stops carrying it with you. And I had just dropped it. Quietly. No warning. No return. Just gravity gone. From that point on, everything became math. Not emotion. Not conflict. Just clean subtraction. Every move I made was quiet. Intentional. Invisible, if you weren't looking closely. I started separating the essentials. Banking. Passwords. Paperwork. Not in some dramatic sweep, just slow shifts. Autopay canceled. Shared accounts rerouted. Her name quietly removed from things she hadn't touched in years anyway. I stopped paying for convenience. No more spa boxes. No more weekend deliveries. If she noticed, she didn't say. Maybe she thought it was a glitch. It wasn't. I logged out of our streaming profiles. Started building new ones. Fresh logins. No shared history. No suggestions based on our shows. No more algorithm of us. Even the small stuff, I reclaimed. I moved my favorite mug to my office. Started taking my keys with me everywhere, even inside the house. Kept my charger. Kept my space. I knew how she operated. She didn't fight obvious change. She ignored the quiet kind. So I made my departure silent. Emotionally, I was already miles away. Now I was laying down the physical path to match. She still hadn't confronted what she said that day on the phone. Still pretending it hadn't happened. Still sitting beside me at dinner like we were close. Still asking half-hearted questions like, want anything from the store? She had no idea I was preparing for absence. One night, she walked into the living room holding a bottle of wine. 2 glasses. Said she missed our talks. Asked if we could just reconnect for a minute. I looked at her, the woman who once made my heart sprint with just a glance, and I felt nothing. Not hate. Not pain. Just clarity. So I told her I was tired. And I went to bed. She followed me 15 minutes later. Didn't say a word. Just curled up beside me and let the silence stretch like it used to. Only now it wasn't comfort. It was the evidence. I woke up before her the next morning. Stood in the doorway and watched her sleep. Her face peaceful. Unaware. And I thought, this was how she always wanted it. No tension. No demand. Just presence without weight. But it was an illusion. Because soon, she'd wake up and realize the weight was gone, and so was the sinner. I started keeping a list. Not revenge. Not leverage. Just clarity. What I brought. What I paid for. What she never noticed. What I never asked for credit on. It grew fast. By the end of the week, I had a plan. A clean one. A smart one. No slamming doors. No messy exits. Just a timeline. And once I had that, I finally breathed. For the first time in months, I wasn't surviving inside our marriage. I was preparing to leave it. She sensed something. Started asking where I'd been going. Why I was so quiet lately. Asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. And that, ironically, was the only truth I'd told her in a long time. There wasn't a single moment where I said, I'm leaving. That's not how men like me exit. We don't announce. We don't perform. We just stop showing up in the places we're no longer seen. It started with a simple change of routine. I stopped coming straight home after work. Didn't say where I was going. Didn't leave notes. Sometimes I'd hit the gym. Other times, I'd just sit in my car at a quiet overlook and listen to nothing. She started texting more. Where are you? You okay? Should I wait for you to eat? I answered briefly. Or didn't. Never rude. Just minimal. That week, I booked a storage unit under my name. Nothing big. Just enough to move the things that mattered. My tools. Some clothes. A few photos. Things she never touched, but I didn't trust her to respect once I was gone. I moved in phases. One box at a time. One drawer emptied while she showered. She never noticed. Because she wasn't looking. And that was the final proof I needed. The woman who once knew if I'd had a bad day just by how I closed the door didn't notice me preparing to disappear. She asked one night if I was mad at her. Said she could feel something off. I said I was just tired. She asked if I still loved her. And that was the moment. That was the lever. The final test. I looked her in the eyes and said, "What do you think?" She paused. Not because she didn't have an answer, but because, for the first time, she realized mine didn't matter anymore. She said she didn't know. And I nodded. That was all. No accusation. No demand for accountability. Just a quiet surrender of any last need to be understood. The next day, I met with a lawyer. Not to serve papers. Not yet. Just to understand the landscape. It was clean. No kids. Minimal entanglements. A few shared investments I'd already separated emotionally from. He asked me if I was sure. I said I'd never been clearer. That weekend, she tried something new. Made plans for both of us. Brunch. A walk downtown. Even picked out a movie, one I used to mention, back when she still listened. I went along. Smiled. Played the role. Not to give her hope. To write the ending. Because sometimes, the most generous thing you can do is let someone believe everything's fine. Just long enough for them to feel it when it's gone. That night, I sat beside her on the couch. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Sighed. Whispered, "Maybe we're okay." I didn't answer. Because in 48 hours, I'd be gone. Not forever. But far enough that she'd have to cross a canyon to find me again. And by then, she'd be standing at the edge alone. It happened on a Sunday. The house was still. She was in the bedroom folding laundry, humming some song I didn't recognize. I walked through the hallway slowly, my bag already in the car. One final sweep. Phone charger. Watch. A pair of running shoes by the door. Nothing emotional. Nothing she'd argue over. Just mine. She didn't hear the front door open. Didn't hear the click of the lock turning for the last time with my key on the inside. I didn't write a letter. Didn't leave a dramatic note or poetic closure. I left the silence. The same silence she once built between us now returned in full. And this time, it was deliberate. The drive felt colder than it should have. Not because I was sad. Because the weight had shifted. Leaving wasn't heavy. Staying had been. I checked into a short-term apartment 30 minutes away. Spare. Clean. Unfamiliar enough to feel like a reset. I turned my phone off. For the first 12 hours, there was peace. Then came the calls. Missed 1, 2, 5. Then the texts. Where are you? Is this a joke? Come home. Please. Let's talk. I didn't mean it. Please. I read each one. Not out of cruelty. Out of recognition. This was the storm after the drought. The panic that comes not when you're left, but when you realize someone planned their absence and didn't tell you. By Monday evening, she showed up at my office. Tired eyes. No makeup. Voice low, unsure. She asked why. Why now? Why this way? Why without a word? I told her there had been 1,000 words. She just hadn't listened when they were quiet. That I had been leaving long before I walked out the door. She asked if there was someone else. I shook my head. Told her this wasn't about someone new. It was about someone lost, me. That's when she cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just that small, broken exhale people give when they realize a chapter closed without them. I didn't comfort her. That wasn't mine to hold anymore. She asked if there was a chance. If we could work on things. Rebuild. Start fresh. I looked at her. At the woman who once lit up every room in my life, and now stood across from me asking to re-enter a space she'd abandoned long before I locked the door. I said no. Not because I hated her. Because I'd already mourned the version of her I married. And she hadn't lived in this relationship long enough to notice the funeral. She whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually go." And that was the line. The sentence that told me everything. She thought I was permanent. That I was duty. That I was furniture. That I was love with no terms. And now she understood. Even stability can walk away. Especially when taken for granted. 3 weeks. That's how long it's been since I walked out. Since I left the key on the counter. Since I stopped explaining. Since I stopped existing in the version of life where she was the sinner. She still texts sometimes. Not often. Just enough to remind me she's circling the wreckage, hoping to find a door that's still unlocked. She wrote, I'm in therapy. She wrote, I've been reading everything you ever said, trying to understand. She wrote, I miss your silence more than I ever missed your words. But here's the truth she never expected. I don't miss her. Not in anger. Not in pride. I just don't miss who I became next to her. The man who muted himself to keep the peace. The man who begged for affection with gestures instead of words. The man who waited to be chosen, day after day, by someone who had already left the room. He's gone. And in his place stands someone quieter, yes, but heavier, rooted, reassembled. I see her sometimes, on social media, out with friends, dressed up, eyes that smile too wide, like she's convincing herself the new chapter is exciting. Maybe it is, but she'll never know the man I am now, because he was forged in the silence she left behind. And you can't revisit the fire once the ashes have been swept clean. A mutual friend told me she still talks about me, still says, he just left, still frames it like it happened out of nowhere. And maybe, from the outside, it did. But those who live inside slow collapse know. There's nothing sudden about leaving. There's only the moment you stop waiting to be noticed. And once you cross that line, there's no coming back. Not for closure. Not for forgiveness. Not even for the echo of what was good. Because what was good wasn't enough to survive what wasn't. And now? Now I live differently. Quieter. Cleaner. With space to feel myself again. I cook for one. Sleep diagonally. Wake up without bracing for emotional drafts. There's peace in that. There's life in that. She once said, I don't feel anything for you. And now, I finally understand what she meant. Because I don't feel anything for her either. Not hate. Not hurt. Not hope. Just air. And silence. And the stillness that only comes when you've finally closed the door. And know you'll never open it again. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.